Thank you. I'd like to take notes. Thank you. That was loud.
Go.
I'd like to call to order the Middletown City Council meeting for July 6th, 2021. If we could start with a moment of meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Gang, can you please call the roll for us?
Ms. Vittori.
Here.
Ms. Denny.
Here.
Mr. Moon.
Here.
Mr. Mulligan.
Here.
Mayor Condrey.
Here. Okay, this evening we have one public hearing. I believe Ms. Combs is ready to go.
Oh, good evening.
Thank you.
Right. So this is a right-of-way vacation petition. The request is a vacation request by Keith Bailey for vacation of city-owned public right-of-way that is located between the properties located at 430 Kenridge Drive and 431 Kenridge Drive, Middletown, Ohio 45044. Parcel IDs Q65310700000038 and Q653107000017. The city-owned property requested for vacation is approximately 0.10 acres in size. The Planning Commission recommendation of approval is being forwarded to City Council for final review and decision. As you can see in front of you, Exhibit A is showing in that red box where the vacation requested is located. The petitioner's address right there with the star on it. Staff analysis. Per the petitioner, he has been maintaining the city-owned lot since 1997. Since that time, the applicant has paid for new concrete driveway apron across the entire lot. The petitioner claims that the neighboring property, 430 Kenridge Drive, has become a rental property and that there have been issues with parked and unlicensed vehicles left in the off-street parking area, issues with the grass not being cut, landscaping overgrowth, and other issues. The petitioner requests that the city vacate the property and transfer it to him in its entirety. That way he can have legal rights to keep the property free from junk and in good condition. Per the Ohio Revised Code, the process for right-of-way vacation requires filing an application with the Planning Commission, and the recommendation is forwarded to City Council. The Planning Commission recommendation is forwarded to you for final review and decision. If approved, the property is split evenly between the abutting property owners and ceases to be right-of-way. As you can see, the pictures on the screen were of the actual vacation property. So, next slide. Legal notice. Meeting notices were sent to property owners within 200 feet of the proposed street vacation as well as utility providers. No objections were received. An important determination of the right-of-way vacation is that there is no longer a public need for the property as a public street. Other department comments. Engineering department. The property can be vacated and sold to the two abutting property owners. The city will need to maintain an easement on the property as there is a water line that runs through there. Review criteria. 1. The vacation of the requested right-of-way should not be a detriment to the neighborhood or emergency services, access, or utility providers. 2. Planning Commission recommendation is forwarded again to City Council for a public hearing. City Council makes the final decision on the right-of-way. And that concludes my staff report. Happy to answer any questions.
Just one question, Ms. Combs. On the red rectangle there, it looks like it blocks the entry into the other home. Any issues or concerns there? Or?
None were expressed to us. The property owner who is wishing to have the right-of-way vacation is here tonight. I do know that. But it looks like his driveway apron was a little bit further past that and does not affect them getting into their driveway.
Any other comments from council or questions? Never have I heard the term vacation used so many times. It's making me want to travel. Okay, with that being said, we will open the public hearing then.
Thank you.
If we have any comments that anyone would like to make in favor of this public hearing, you may please come up to the dais and speak. Come on up, and please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name's Keith Bailey. I live at 431 Kenridge. I'm the one requesting the vacation. So just wanted to make sure everyone knew that I was here, could answer any questions for you. So we've been maintaining the property since we moved in. Originally, it was actually half my work and half the neighbor's work, and the house has since been sold several times. Now it's owned by a rental company, and they don't claim or do anything in that property. So we'd like to just take that property and be able to maintain it. We don't have any plans to build anything or anything like that. It's just a green space. We allow people to walk through it. We have a lot of foot traffic that comes from one side of Kenridge to the other. So we've maintained the landscaping on both sides. We mulch the area. We have a mound built up and some off-street parking there. And we'll continue to do that. So that's just the plan's really just to kind of control it. We've had some issues over the past few years with the rentals. And so we just want to try to be able to control that a little bit more. Any questions that we have?
I'd like to thank you for maintaining the property when it
Oh, you're welcome.
yours to do.
Our pleasure. We like it out there. We planted a blue spruce out there 20-some years ago in order to keep the cars from driving through. We've had some cars that used to drive through, and when they got to the other side and saw that 2-foot drop off, they were a little surprised. But it happened several times. We had a police chase in there one time, so we've had some excitement. But no, it's a real nice area. It's nice to be able to look out our front window and see the nice grassy area all the way down. So.
Now, is there a designated walking path that goes through there from one side to the other?
There isn't. There's actually, I started a path, a brick path about 10 foot there. The sidewalks go on either side, on one side of Kenridge, and there's no sidewalks on the other side, on the old side that we live on. And so, but there's the people can either go left of the blue spruce or right of the blue spruce. There's kind of a worn path through there. We have a dog, and the dogs, we set the dog's invisible fence way back so that the dog doesn't bother people that are walking through there.
So you do plan to maintain that access from one side to the other?
Absolutely, yeah, you bet. Well, we like to see the people go through, and a lot of people walk, so they'll walk Cambridge and down Donham and then Kenridge and back up Manchester. So kind of a big block. So there's a lot of flow there, and then you've got all the DoorDash people that deliver on the wrong side of the street, and they have to walk through there. Occasional UPS driver too. So, but yeah, absolutely. No, we don't have any intentions to to control it in any other way other than just to be able to plant stuff out there, and if we have any issues, to be able to have legal control over it. That's really the goal. So, any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I guess I have a question for staff. I'm curious why the road was never connected in the first place. Was there a reason that didn't happen, or why that wouldn't happen in the future? I'm just curious.
Actually, we have a little bit of history on it. So when they initially they were going to cut the street through. When they built Kenridge and they came around the other way, not really sure why they decided not to connect it then. But there's an issue now. There's about a 2-foot elevation change over the width of the property, which is like 130 feet. And in order to correct that, not to have a big hump in the road, it would have to go back several hundred feet in one direction or the other.
And regrade it?
In order to regrade.
And at the time, they said, because we checked before we bought the property, we wanted to know what the city planned, and they said, the city said it's on the record, we could cut it through. But in the meantime, they opened up Kennick, and apparently you had to have a certain amount of, be able to get in.
Access to the neighborhood,
yeah.
right.
And
So
they have all that now.
they had back through Donham, they had access over to Marshall and over to Kennick. So they said we've already got 3 access points back in that neighborhood. So we have to finish it.
It's just unfortunate for accessibility and for all of the reasons that you said, drivers come back there, people think they can drive through, the streets are named the same, so I'm just curious.
And for the record, because I know you guys don't have a microphone over there, he mentioned that it was a grading issue, and also there were already access points available. Hopefully that'll help Ms. Skank when she's doing minutes as well. Are there any other comments in favor of the public hearing? Okay, with that, are there any comments in opposition to it? If so, please come on up to the dais. Okay, that will close the public hearing and move on to citizen comments. Did we receive any citizen comments this evening?
We did not.
Okay, no citizen comments this evening. Council comments. Let's start with Mr. Moon. Let's go out of order.
No comments this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nenny.
Yes, I just would like to share my condolences with the DeBrosi family. It was very unexpected news the day after seeing someone who was such a staple at Fenwick Festivals on Saturday night and to learn of Ed's passing on Sunday. So condolences to his family and thank him for all of his dedication and volunteer work over the years to the service of the city. So, and thank you to everyone who came out to the Memorial Day Parade. It was a really nice turnout. I know it was a hot day. It's always hot on the 4th of July, but we had a nice little turnout, and the fireworks were awesome. So thank you to all the organizers and everyone who helped make that happen. Thank you.
Mr. Mulligan.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll add my condolences to Ed DeBrosi's family. He was an exemplar when it came to volunteering, not only for the Middletown Catholic community at John 23rd and Fenwick, but also Light Up Middletown and the Grandpa Gang. So he's an example to us all for selfless service. Also appreciate the work that the city employees did with putting together the 4th of July celebration at Smith Park. It was a great turnout. If you judge things by the length of the funnel cake line, it was a very well-attended event and very successful. So thanks to our sponsors and the city staff for putting that on, and also the organizers of the 4th of July parade. Great lineup, and enjoyed that very much. Thank you.
Ms. Vittori.
Yes, much of the same. My condolences to the DeBrosi family. It is a huge loss for our community, and not being able to see Ed around, and it's going to be a very strange experience, but we're all grateful to him and everything that family does for our community. And thank you also to the 4th of July. Those fireworks were amazing. I was super excited. I feel like they were the best yet. So I thought that was a really nice way to come back after not having them for a year. To come back and have the community come together, and I felt like it was also probably the busiest that we've seen in a while. So I think that's a good confidence booster for everyone, that we're out and we're enjoying each other and being safe, and I thought it was a nice weekend. So thank you to the Bash, the organizers who've tirelessly done that for years. It was a great night to be together. And thank you to DMI for the events downtown that have been happening. We had a progressive picnic, there was a big pride celebration, and downtown has been very busy for those. So it's just nice to see happy, smiling, unmasked faces. So, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to thank all the volunteers and community members who put on so many important events for our community, the city staff, and like I said, those volunteers. Usually when I give a speech somewhere, I show up and I'm like, oh, there's not that many people. When I got up on that stage on the 3rd, I was like, this is amazing. Just so many people came out, and I think just the community really needed it. So good timing to have a 4th of July celebration in Middletown, and I'm glad everybody enjoyed it so much. I had a couple comments about a few things I noticed. I went through and just did a rehash of our board and commission meeting minutes, and I know everybody's working hard to get them in, and I'm very grateful, and thank you, Amy, for all your hard work working with everybody. We're behind on at least 3 months with Airport Commission, a couple months with the Architectural Review Board. We haven't got the Board of Zoning Appeals. Have they met at all this year? Okay.
I don't believe that the Architectural Review Board has met either.
Okay.
And I'm not sure about the airport, but that Architectural Review Board and that Board of Zoning.
They
Appeals
meet as needed?
As needed.
Gotcha.
So that can be several months between.
Makes sense. Okay.
Just on the airport, we've approved minutes at every meeting, so perhaps it's just a filing issue, but
Okay.
they're done, they're up to date. We just
Same
maybe
with
haven't received
Architecture
them.
Review Board. We've approved the prior meetings minutes at every meeting, so they should be ready for approval.
Okay. Have you guys met this year?
Yeah, we've met several times.
Okay, then maybe we just need to
I'll
reach
just
out and
reach
get
out
him.
to those
Yeah.
liaisons then. I'll be happy to do
I
that.
just like went through and made a little spreadsheet so that because I haven't heard from him, and I really enjoy reading the minutes because it really helps me stay informed of all the hard work people are doing. So I know Citizens Advisory Board, I've been to the meetings, and I know we approve minutes as well, so we just got to get those. We don't have any this year. I know the Visitors Bureau got a lot in today, so we're just like 1 month maybe behind on that one. Historic Commission is 4 months behind. I don't know if those have been approved. Library, we don't have any this year yet either.
I just submitted them, and they'll be on the next agenda.
Okay, awesome. And then just one Planning Commission that I would have probably expected to have by now. So just as an update, that's where we stand, but I really appreciate it. There's quite a few that are putting them in on time, so thank you everyone for your hard work. And just the most we can do this, like as they come, the more timely they are for us to just be able to use them and actually make really good decisions based on all the hard work people are doing. The longer we wait, obviously, the more they become overcome by events and not as useful.
I just want to review real quick, the people that I need to reach out to, because I don't want to miss anybody.
Sure.
Airport, Architecture Review Board, Board of Zoning Appeals, CAB, Historic Commission, and Library. And Planning Commission, did you say?
Yeah, at the May 12th meeting,
Okay.
and I'm sure the Visitors Bureau knows the May meeting is still standing out there.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. And then one other thing, I did speak with citizen Kyle McGlone, who came to the last council meeting about, what was the street he was? Fleming Road, yes. He said that he was working with the fire department, had a lot of success there, but he said he did not receive any callback from city staff like was promised. So I just want to raise that because I know we've had a few citizens say that they haven't gotten follow-up from making citizen comments, specifically when we say we're going to reach out to them. So just want to note he didn't ever get called back from city staff. He had to follow up with them after the meeting.
Mayor, I attempted to call him back. I might have misdialed. I'll check on that again tomorrow, but that would have been my error otherwise.
Okay, sounds
If he
good.
had a wrong phone number, or if someone had a wrong phone
I might have
number, maybe
misdialed.
I called him on the one that was on the comment card, so I don't know.
I might have misdialed, but I apologize,
good.
and we'll follow up with
No
him.
problem. Anyway, he's working with the fire department, I know on that, so hopefully they'll have some luck. And that's all that I have this evening. Mr. Palaniuk, city manager report.
Yes, Madam Mayor, City Council members, good evening. Couple things to note. We continue to look for a new finance director as well as city engineer. We also have the top executive assistants in both my office and now Development Services office vacant. And specific to the finance director and city engineer, because we now have been looking for a while, because it's so competitive in that area and there just seems to be a real difficulty all across the region, we may very well have to look at a recruiter. Unfortunately, we typically wouldn't have to do that, but we're just simply not getting the kind of success that we had hoped for. So I just want to make a note of that. We will continue to try every possible area that we can, everything that we can do, but it just seems right now that an awful lot of people are out there looking for jobs, and it's tough to compete. So please bear with us, particularly with my office, because I'm answering phones and answering doors and things like that. So sometimes if a few things slip through the cracks, I would just beg your indulgence until we can get some of these jobs refilled again. And that was the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Skink, would you please present the consent agenda for this evening?
For your consideration this evening, we have the approval of the city council minutes of June 10th and June 15th, 2021. Receive and file the following board and commission minutes: the Civil Service Commission of May 20th, 2021, Middletown Visitors Bureau of September 15th, October 19th, November 16th, December 14th, 2020, and January 25th, March 15th, and April 19th, 2021. Confirm the personnel appointments of Brian Brooks to the position of electronics. I don't know how that happened. Confirm the personnel appointments of Brian Brooks to the position of Electronics Maintenance Supervisor in the Public Works Department, Tyler Roselle, Matthew Green, Thomas Lindsay III, and Jake Jackson to the position of firefighter EMT in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Fire. Jacob Lentz, Zachary Sharp, and Joshua Lentz to the position of firefighter paramedic in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Fire. Nathan Morgan to the position of patrol officer in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Police. And Jonathan Zachary Hoover to the position of corrections officer in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Police. To confirm the promotional appointment of Tyler Knopf to the position of equipment operator in the Department of Public Works and Utilities, Division of Street Maintenance. To receive and file an oath of office for Brian Singleton. To approve a purchase from J.D. Devers and Son Incorporated of Trotwood, Ohio, in the amount of $61,380 for a new service body with electric hydraulic crane and other mounted equipment for two 2020 Ford F-450 trucks. To authorize the city manager into a contract with In Situ Form Technologies to complete the rehabilitation of approximately 720 linear feet of sewer near the Wildwood Road, and to receive and file the fiscal officer certificates and note registrar agreements.
I move to approve the issues and actions set forth in the consent agenda.
Second?
Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
For the motion agenda, we have to authorize the city manager to enter into a contract with Barrett Paving Materials Incorporated to proceed with a Moore Road water main replacement.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
And to authorize the city manager enter into a contract with J.L. Cuck General Contractors Incorporated for the construction of the pumping system for potable well 20.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Ms. Cohen, will you please present the legislation for us this evening?
Certainly, Your Honor. We have 12 matters for your consideration this evening. We are asking you to consider 4 matters as emergency measures. To ask if there's a motion to waive the charter requirements for 2 readings and 30 days to enactment regarding Resolution R 2021-28, Ordinance O 2021-54, Ordinance O 2021-55, Ordinance O 2021-56.
I move that the charter provision requiring readings on 2 separate days be waived and that the previously read ordinances and resolutions be declared emergencies and read one time only.
Second?
Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
The first matter for your consideration this evening is here for a second reading on ordinance number O 2021-52, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a contract between the city and White Dog Distilling Company for the sale of city-owned property.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Do you have any comments or questions on this? I really love White Dog and their community involvement, and I think it's a great opportunity to have them put a park here, and I think I really like the plans. I just want to keep a precedence for valuing the city property, and I would like to have seen an agreement that was better structured to value the city's investments. I know I emailed, and Chriselle, thank you for your responses, and I feel like something with a high rate land lease per month until the project is completed with that money going towards the purchase price. I just feel like it would be better structured that way. I know we've set a precedence for doing it one way. I'd like to see us value it more. I know the land's appraised something closer to like $83,000, and I know they're investing a lot of money. There's a lot of people investing money in Middletown. They just happen to be next to a city-owned land, which is great, and I'm glad that they're doing something very, very grateful. I just feel like it's a little undervaluing what the property is worth. And aside from that, I really love the plan, and I think it's great. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
No.
The next matter for your consideration is ordinance number O-2021-53, an ordinance changing the zoning classification for 3 parcels located along the south side of Lefferson Road and Audubon Drive from R4 Attached Residential District to PD Planned Development District. Here for a second reading.
Your Honor, excuse me, I would move to table this piece of legislation. There's a couple of concerns that I have. I expressed them a little bit at the last meeting when this was brought for a first reading. Basically, the concerns I have are that we are potentially, approving multiple multifamily rental developments for the city, this month and then next month and then perhaps next year at Town Mall. So I would like for us to take maybe 30-day pause just to look at this and see where we're headed as a city. And just 5 points that I had for staff, if we could look into this. I don't want to make this motion 3 paragraphs long, but if we could look at additional multifamily rental developments that are in the pipeline, so we can quantify what's coming in the next 12 to 18 months. Number 2, the relationship of the planned units versus the data study, and what percentage this or units in the near future would fulfill the estimated 670 suburban units that are needed in the city, according to the Danter study. And number 3, the relationship between the master plan and these developments, including this one at Lefferson Road. And specifically, what does this do, and the other proposals, what does it do for the city's rental versus owner-occupied dwellings? We know from the housing policy that one of the reasons that we went through that process was to increase the owner occupancy rate from 53% to closer to the county average or the state average. So we do have a long way to go. We need to convert 2,700 units to owner occupied to get up to those peer levels. Number 4, what are we doing to encourage the construction of owner-occupied units versus rentals? And number 5, what is the city doing to take offline any outdated or problem rental developments in the city? Because we know the burden that they place on public safety and a host of other things. So with that, if we could just table this piece of legislation and maybe regroup after we get some more answers on these questions. That's my motion.
I was going to make a similar motion.
I find it to be a reasonable request and would second that.
Yeah. Before we vote on it, I kind of want to just put a few, add to what you had to say, Mr. Mulligan. I think you have good points. One other thing that came to mind is the number of one-bedroom units that were proposed, and when we're trying to increase our income tax basis, I don't think, it just seems like adding a lot more one-bedroom units is not going to get us to that goal very quickly. And that's why I think the master plan is so critical and really having that. And so I don't even know if 30 days is enough time. I don't know the answer to that. Staff is going to obviously know a lot better. But I went back and watched the last meeting because I was actually surprised this showed up on the legislation because Mr. Moon had asked about rental amounts and was told that would be forwarded. Ms. Vittori asked about Robin Springs and how the process for changing it to Section 8, and that would be passed to council. Mr. Mulligan asked about the planning and that we were kind of doing things in a silo. I asked about the master plan and about how many two-bedroom units were needed, and then I didn't feel comfortable voting on this until we had that. And I didn't see any answers to any of that before it came for a second reading, so I think tabling it is like the only option that I personally even have because I didn't get any of those answers. And I don't think it was probably reasonable because the master plan isn't done. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. And we don't have to wait for the master plan. We know what the master plan is going to say about increasing home ownership, and that's going to be in there regardless. So
Yeah, I haven't seen a draft.
No, I haven't either.
And that's where, and since I wasn't involved earlier as well, I feel very out of the loop on where we are in that personally.
I can tell you that the final draft should be in May, and that will come to you with city staff first.
Okay.
Before it goes
So maybe it is reasonable in a good amount of time. Great. Okay, so we have a motion, and I heard a second from Ms. Nenny. Okay, Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
Next matter for your consideration this evening is Resolution R 2021-28, a resolution establishing the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 fund and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
Next matter for your consideration is Ordinance O 2021-54, an ordinance authorizing a contract with Barrett Paving Materials Incorporated for the Poinciana Road and Hampton Place Water Main Replacement Project and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Number 5 this evening is ordinance number O 2021-55, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of notes in the maximum principal amount of $1,300,000 in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for purpose of paying costs of acquiring and equipping a fire ladder truck for use by the city's fire department, together with all necessary appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second?
You know, I forgot to ask Jim if he wanted to say anything about those last two. I'm so sorry, Jim. I'd researched so much, I knew my answer, and I just missed it. And I apologize. Would you like to comment on this one?
On number 5?
Yes.
Yes, this really is a companion as well to number 6. And essentially, this is asking to issue and sell bond anticipation notes, or so-called BANs. This is very short-term borrowing, and the only reason we would do this is basically to be able to get to next year where we put it together with a larger issue and gain better terms on it, so that when we have like a big piece of equipment, in this case, the ladder truck, and then with item number 6, which is the water maintenance facility, by putting them together and going out to market as a bond anticipation note for a 1-year term, we then know that we will restructure this next year with a larger issue of some type and gain, better terms on it, put it together in a more reasonable way. But it's just a way when it wasn't necessarily anticipated within the existing budget to do short-term borrowing. So we would ask that you do approve this, and of course, in the case of the ladder truck, specifically, the cost as it was approved last year was $1,287,090.05. We had made this not to exceed $1.3 million, just to have a little flexibility in case something would occur. Similarly, with the water reclamation facility, you will find that on your item number 7, the price specifically as bid is $1,876,932, and we've said not to exceed $2 million on this one.
So for clarification, this one is only about the ladder truck, is that?
Yes, number 5 is exclusively the ladder truck, that's correct.
Can you clarify, section 9, to me, I read that there's a potential for a property tax levy associated with this. It says during the year or years in which the notes are outstanding, there shall be levied on all the taxable property in the city, in addition to all other taxes, the same tax that would have been levied if the bonds had been issued without the prior issuance of the notes.
I'm sorry, what are you reading specifically?
It's page 5, so it's section 9 of the ordinance.
You're reading the first sentence?
Of section 9, yes.
Yeah. It's basically stating that the levy would be the same if we hadn't issued the notes. So they wouldn't change. Whatever's in existence wouldn't change independent of the issuance of the notes, basically. Does not contemplate any additional levy.
Okay, I read it that it would be a double or the same tax. It says, in addition to all other taxes, the same tax would have been levied. That's why it read to me like we were looking at higher property tax, and I wanted to confirm that that is not.
There is clearly no additional tax that is being levied as a
Okay.
result of this, nor being contemplated as a result of this.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, Ms. Gank, you please call the roll.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mr. Palanick, would you like to make comments about the last couple that we've already approved, but for clarification purposes and to expand on anything?
I mean,
They
at
were
this point,
fairly
in-
straightforward, but
yeah, at this point in time, because they were fairly straightforward, and unless there were specific questions, I don't feel compelled to, no.
okay, sorry, I apologize again. Okay, Ms. Cohen, if you'd like to continue.
Item number 6 is ordinance number O-2021-56, an ordinance providing for the issuance and sale of notes in the maximum principal amount of $2 million in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purposes of paying the cost of improvements to the municipal wastewater system, including the construction, equipping, and installation of a maintenance building, water reclamation facility, together with all necessary and related appurtenances thereto, and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Mr. Palanick, would you like to comment?
I guess in some way, just primarily, number 7 will be sort of very important to this because it really is the actual bid for this work. Number 7 describes the need for this particular facility, talks about how we fund it, et cetera. So if it's okay, I will describe that under number 7, but this obviously is simply the ability to provide the financing that will allow us then to in turn potentially approve number 7.
Getting a little feedback on your microphone, so you might push it slightly.
Sorry about that.
I personally, because this is an emergency, I would personally appreciate maybe a description about number 7 before we vote on number 6. Is that out of the realm of?
No, I'd be glad to do that. That's not a problem. Yeah, essentially, the water reclamation facility over the last number of years has grown in a number of different ways. It's had to treat a lot more, but it was never added to in terms of what was just a tiny little workshop, basically, within some of the existing space. And as we've expanded and grown and built over time, we realize that there is just simply nothing that's adequate in terms of a purpose-built maintenance facility for the folks that really need to take care of the ongoing, and it is significant, obviously, a facility of that size and significance, to be able to have the kind of tools, the kind of parts, the kind of facilities and functions so that they can do the work that's necessary to avoid, things that are happen in the future that don't have to have us call out, much more expensive repair folks or consultants or whatever. And so this is simply constructing for the first time a sort of standalone, separate, fully covered maintenance building as part of the water reclamation facility. And so that was designed and contemplated, and then we bid that out. There were 3 proposals that were received after a request for proposals. Those proposals came back between 1.8 and 2.1 million. The lowest of those came from Peerless Carmack Construction for both the design and construction of the facility. Specifically, their bid was $1,876,932. I would note also that when the packet first came out, the staff report said $1,876,932, and the legislation said $1,826,000. That has been now fixed to make it accurate to be with the staff report, which is the $1,876,932, just to make sure of that. So we're asking that this be approved. This funding would come, obviously, as a result of item number 6, which is the short-term financing, and then longer-term, of course, it will be repaid through the sanitary sewer funding that will come and then pay off what will be a longer-term bond issue.
I saw a reference to safety concerns in the current building. Do you have any specifics of what those safety concerns are?
Yeah, I would ask Scott Tadish if he wanted to comment on that specifically. Or, okay, Nikita is here. I'm sorry, Nikita Lancaster can do that.
Right now, the workshop's located on the second floor of like the main pump station building. So if they're trying to get any kind of equipment or parts up there to maintain it, they're trying to fit it in the small elevator, or they're going out in the field to work on those things. So sometimes they're working in spaces that don't have the ventilation that they need to use tools and stuff like that. So.
Thank you.
Sense?
And I know we previously approved a maximum reserve to be kept at the end of every year for the purposes of capital improvements. Would this fall into that in any fashion? It seems like there's a lot of capital improvement requests, and I know we're coming up with a capital improvement plan.
The water reclamation maintenance facility would not, because that's an enterprise fund. The ladder truck potentially could, because it is a general fund funded item. But typically, equipment and rolling stock, we usually always try to fund through the equipment revolving fund. And I think we had mentioned last time at the meeting that this one didn't, because we had purchased one last time used, and it didn't register as expensive as typically it would, and we didn't ultimately put as much depreciation on an ongoing basis into the fund as we should. We will remedy that in the future, but technically, if we wanted to view that as the highest priority, next available general fund requirement, it might be considered that, but if we approve this tonight, then it will no longer be a priority because it will have been funded.
I know you mentioned the enterprise funds, and I noticed nearly $500,000 of the water and sewer enterprise funds over the last 2 years have been used to cover management of the airport, which I believe has been mismanagement of the airport and essentially an airport tax on our water bills for the use of property that we do already own. This is how I view this. I know we've had a lot of discussions about that, but I feel like $500,000 over 2 years, and now we are asking for $2 million for a facility. I'd like to see better appropriation of the enterprise funds for what I believe they should be used for instead of transferred to the airport for, as an example.
If I might respond, basically any enterprise fund utility will always pay the cost that a typical private sector entity would pay in similar circumstances. Typically, we talk about this as a payment in lieu of taxes or something. Otherwise, what is oftentimes thought of by the private sector particularly is that there is an unfair advantage to government that they don't have. So in this case, what's happening is the water facility is actually paying lease to the airport, which is owned by the city, so it comes back to the general fund, for the space that it takes up for providing for the well field. So that space is at a lease rate consistent with what we would charge, for some other space typically that would be made available to, if it were the private sector. So if we didn't do that, we might be called on it by auditors, basically, for not accounting for the fact that there is true value in all the land that is taken up by the well field, and it's for the water facility. So that is not unusual. That is very typical of almost any other community in a similar circumstance. So we feel very comfortable with it. We think it's an appropriate financial means to do that. And the numbers that are been charged are relatively modest. And if they were compared to other communities, probably would be lower. So we're very satisfied with it.
And I know you and I just agree to disagree on this topic, but it is relevant to tonight's discussion, so I just wanted to raise it from my perspective. Any other comments? Okay, so we are specifically discussing still number 6, ordinance number 2021-56 for clarity. And we did have a motion and a second for that particular one. Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
No.
Item number 7 this evening is ordinance number O-2021-57, an ordinance authorizing a contract with Perkins Carmack Construction LLC for the design and construction of a maintenance building at the Water Reclamation Facility, here for a first reading.
I think we've already discussed it. Mr. Palanick, do you have anything else you'd like to add to it?
No, nothing further, thank you.
Thank you.
So moved for adoption. Oh, wait, sorry, first reading.
First
Just
reading.
First reading.
Yes, please.
Item number 8 is Resolution R 2021-29, a resolution declaring the City Council of the City of Middletown, Ohio's intent to proceed with placing a 1 mil property tax levy on the May 2022 election ballot for the purposes of providing funding for the construction of certain fire station improvements for the use by the City of Middletown Division of Fire, also here for a first reading.
Mr. Palanick,
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of City Council, I do
do
have.
you mind adjusting, just maybe moving, right, maybe bending the, I don't know.
Why do we suppose that's doing that?
No, it was doing it to Ms. Skank too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that good?
That's better. Yeah,
All right.
thank you.
We do have a presentation this morning, but prior to that, if I could, we have a brief video that we would like to show that is related specifically to this particular project that we've developed to better sort of describe the situation.
One of the most important elements of a fire station is that it is safe, healthy, and efficient place for firefighters, paramedics, and EMTs to work.
At the outset of my tenure, it became really clear to me that the quality of our facilities that we provided to our firefighters and our paramedics simply didn't meet any standard that was contemporary or otherwise.
The general habitability of all 4 fire stations is fair at best and poor at worst. Structural instability, insulation, inefficiency, not very conducive to technological uses, leakage from the roofs leaking into the bedroom, poor energy efficiency, poor ability to create technological advancements. The fire service is very keenly aware today of how carcinogens affect the health and well-being of firefighters throughout their careers and into their retirement areas.
There's a real issue here that oftentimes some of the toxins that they encounter, if it's not dealt with properly within that station, we can put them in a very jeopardized, a very compromised position.
What that means is we don't have the ability to contain some of the exhaust and chemicals that we work with on a day-to-day basis. We have an incredible amount of increase in current firefighters and retired firefighters dealing with cancer issues.
When we think about the fact that we demand so much of these professionals, we ought to provide them at least someplace that is healthy, that is safe. You know, they have to live and work in these facilities. And the quality of where they're asked to live, to work, to prepare, to be out there and put their lives on the line is just simply not up to a standard that we should be asking them to be part of. We recognize, too, that the fire service has been primarily dominated by men over the years, but we also want to become very inclusive in the future. These facilities don't allow us to do that. They were never designed to accommodate female firefighters, so that's another thing, that just to be a contemporary standard where we're trying to be inclusive, trying to actually recruit and to bring female firefighters to become part of the service here in Middletown, it's very hard for us to do that right now because these stations simply aren't equipped for that.
We realize that we need 4 new fire stations in the city of Middletown, and we need them now. The new fire stations in the city of Middletown will make Middletown a safer place to live. And the reason for that is our stations being more modern, more efficient, will allow our firefighters to get on the apparatus and respond quicker.
In each case, we've determined that these sites that we've now acquired and paid for and that we have designated as the new sites for the stations provide the most optimal opportunity for response times. So that becomes the key for the future.
This is not a new idea that we need new firehouses in Middletown. We knew where those stations should be as early as 2001 when one of the first station location studies were done. And here we are in 2021 with a great opportunity to actually bring this to fruition and provide a safe, healthy environment for our firefighters to work in and provide some pride and ownership to the citizens of Middletown on what their fire station should look like and what they should expect from their responding firefighters.
So the way we're looking at this, there's a real economy of scale in building them all at the same time. They will be in the right places, not just now, but well into the future. And it will make the most sense for building a safe, appropriate facility that these firefighters can live and work in now and well into the future.
The Middletown firefighters, paramedics, and EMTs are very proud to be part of this community.
So that was kind of a brief video that sort of is introducing us to the item that is before you this evening. We'll ultimately come back at the next meeting as well for possible final adoption. That is, we are requesting that the City Council consider placing on the May 3rd, 2022 election ballot a 1 mil property tax levy that would be put in place for a term of 25 years to fund the debt service on the 4 new fire stations. This 1 mil levy basically would be replacing the 1 mil levy that is expiring effective this year, 2021, that for the last 10 years has been funding the debt service for the Central Connections Senior Center. We heard from Central Connections recently that their debt service now has been paid off. That is no longer necessary. And the idea would be to extend that levy then for a 25-year term. And in that regard, it would then raise about $16.8 million, which would fund a new headquarters facility on 3.6 acres at Yankee Road and Cherry Street, which is the former Garfield School, 24,300 square feet at an estimated total cost of $7,168,500. Station 81's new location would be 2.85 acres at Henry Avenue and Charles Street, the former Jefferson School. It would be a prototype station of 10,200 square feet, estimated cost of $3,009,000. Station number 3 is number 85, built on 2 acres at Sophie and Stultz Drive, which is the underdeveloped southern portion of Dowling Park. It also would be a prototype station of 10,200 square feet. Each of those 2 would have 2 bays, $3,009,000. And station number 4 would be number 82, 2.7 acres, the recently acquired property at State Road 122 and Atrium Boulevard that we had purchased from Premier Health and Atrium Medical Center. That would be slightly larger at 11,800 square foot because it would be 3 bays. Estimated total cost $3,481,000. In combination, the all-in total cost for design and construction of those 4 facilities, $16,667,500. Bond issuance ultimately would be for $16,685,000 of principal, but also with that would be included a bond retirement fund, which would be likely necessary. That would be funded at $676,000. There would be issuance costs of, we believe, approximately $333,000. We expect the interest to come in at approximately 2.69% for the 25 years. Beginning with the first year of collections, we estimate about $848,000 in property taxes generated by the 1 mil. If you imagine a 95% collection rate, that's about $805,710 a year. Our further estimation, rather modestly, estimated that 1% increase in those property taxes each non-reevaluation year, and then 5% in reevaluation years. And as a result of that, that does fully cover all of the costs associated with that issuance the way we've contemplated it. So that is essentially what we're asking. It will come back for final second reading at the next council meeting, and if approved, be in effect 30 days thereafter, and of course would wind up on the May 3rd, 2022 ballot. So with that, if you have any and all questions, either for myself or for Chief Lally, I would be more than happy to address them.
Just some comments. Just looking at it historically from my 5 years on council. Probably 3.5 years ago, we started talking to the school district about acquiring some properties, which we completed, I believe, in January of last year. And while the Vail acquisition was always kind of what people knew we wanted, we also wanted some of these properties for just this reason. So I'm pleased to see that we are executing on that plan and bringing that forward. About a year later, the three of us went through visiting all the fire stations in the town. It was pretty eye-opening for me and very convincing that we don't have the proper ventilation, the proper technology for the cleaning of the equipment. The properties are not strategically located. Chief, correct me if I'm wrong, but we haven't built a station since the 1970s, even though we acquired one in the 1980s through an annex. Is that accurate?
It's fairly accurate.
Yeah.
The 70s headquarters was built.
So we haven't built a fire station in my lifetime. So looking at it strategically, putting my insurance brain on, which is my day-to-day work, you know, the north side of town is not properly protected. East side of town is not properly protected. And I think we all see the east side probably as the most high-profile growth that's going to happen over the next 20 or 30 years. So for me, it comes down to a question of not if, but how quickly, because we have to do this. So the question of whether it happens all at once or over a phased period of time is what it comes down to for me. And so I guess my question to staff, and it was briefly discussed in the staff report, is if for some reason it doesn't make it to the ballot or it makes it to the ballot and it fails, what's the fallback option? Because we have to do this one way or another.
Essentially, we don't think any of the possible options to this are better. In every case, we believe them to be worse, but there are options. You know, there is the option, if it fails on the ballot, to ask for a ballot later that would look at income tax. If income tax were done, it would take at least 1/8 of a percent, and it would take at least 15 years. You could also come back with the same question on a property tax levy. You could also look at how could we fund this absent a levy. So obviously either it's more revenues or it's less expenses. If we tried to cut something on the order of $820,000 to $850,000 a year out of our budget for 25 years, there's really only one place to do that. That's within personnel, and the largest numbers there are public safety. So we would be doing the exact opposite of what we're trying to accomplish here, which is trying to enhance and improve public safety by making major cuts to, you know, the personnel side of it in order to build buildings. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. Obviously, on the revenue side, it would be great to come up with some additional revenues that would pay for this. We're always trying to increase general recurring revenues, particularly through economic development, but there's no specific guarantee that that could happen or how quickly it could happen, or if it would ever get past simply keeping up with all of the other added expenses that occur as that's also happening. Some people have asked the question, can you use federal funds, ARPA funds, for this? By every reading we have, by every legal interpretation, we cannot. Basically, ARPA funds are for dealing with the negative economic impacts of the pandemic, or specifically for economic development, which is called out particularly hospitality and tourism. So if there's somebody out there who has an interpretation that believes we could use any of these funds for that, I'd love to hear it, but I haven't heard anybody that believes we can. So that doesn't seem to be an alternative. We could then also develop some sort of a plan over 25 or 30 years or whatever, or go 5, 6, 7 years at a time, trying to build one station at a time, and hope that we had enough recurring new revenues each time to do that. That would not solve the problem that every one of these stations are truly deficient and obsolete right now, and you will be spending dramatic amounts on maintenance with every passing year, just in roofs and HVAC and other things. So again, we think any other alternative is not as good as this one. Doing nothing, again, is probably not a good alternative. So, you know, we believe that ultimately given that this is a property tax levy that is expiring and can be extended, it's not actually increasing from where we've been, at least not for the last 10 years. We think it makes a lot of sense.
Jim, I've heard from some people in the community neighborhoods where these new stations are going to be located. And some of them are concerned. Specifically, I've heard from a couple of people who live near the new Sophie station about the proximity to their neighborhood. And what would you say to those residents about, you know, the benefits or, you know, the pros of having that station in their neighborhood? Because I think we're going to maybe get a little bit of negative feedback from people about that.
It's kind of interesting because I've been in this profession a long time, and I've dealt with some situations in the past which is sort of the opposite, where we attempted to move a station out of a neighborhood, and we got intense and incredible negative feedback about communities saying, you can't take away our fire station, because I think most people recognize fairly quickly that the proximity is a lot of value. You know, the fact is you then have the proximity if you're the one ultimately that needs that service. The other thing, there can be some, you know, minimal disruption in a fire station, because there are going to be times, obviously, that those units leave and they have to sometimes be running with lights and siren or whatever. But the way they're designed and the way that, you know, they're done, hopefully we limit that disruption as much as possible. And I know we're going to try very hard, particularly in some of those locations, to make them really nice enhancements to the neighborhood and to the particular region of the community. So if it's near a park, we have plans to, you know, make some improvements to that park and make it become a real part of that neighborhood. And I know too, just, and I'll let certainly the chief speak to this, I think firehouses, because those guys and ladies who wind up working there, they don't just work there, they live there. They become a really nice part of the community. So often they're volunteering, they're doing things, they're helping out in and around where they serve. So again, there's so many good reasons why you want to have a firehouse in your particular neighborhood. Chief Lawley, you want to speak to that?
The only thing I can really add to it, and you were correct, you said we have had some conversation with some people who had some concerns. And we've tried to alleviate their concerns with assurances. I know City Manager Palanek said something a little bit about lights and sirens, and that kind of gets people worried. And we deal with this. We've dealt with it all the time. And generally, inside neighborhoods, we don't use our lights and sirens, and we're going to make sure, specifically in the Sophie concern area, that, you know, sirens won't be used until we get out to Marshall. We won't be using that neighborhood to cut in and out of that neighborhood on emergency or non-emergency runs. We use the major roads. The other concern in the Sophie area was the school and the school zone. Our guys are used to dealing with school zones on a daily basis, and a big reason why we're coming out on Sophie is to avoid the drop-off for the school buses on Rosedale, because that's one suggestion that was made. Why don't you go out onto Rosedale? And the traffic on Rosedale will be a little bit tougher to get in and out of.
Just one more. Have we had communication with the school district, given that there is, I guess there's a basketball court, but it's a city basketball court and it's right next to the schools, and I assume they're comfortable with the location?
Chief, have you had specific conversations?
We've very little conversation with them. Really, the basketball court there on the Sophie station is on the city property, part of the park, and we are going to look at as much as we can to improve some of those areas that we can, such as the basketball court there on Sophie. The major parts of the conversation we had with the school district was when we initially thought the school still owned those property, but then Tom and I came to realize, the city owns the property, which any property we use that the city owns is that money we do not have to spend on acquiring the property. And as you stated, the north and the east end of the city, that's our big concern, because getting out to the east end of the city, even where the current Station 82 right now is over 12 minutes. And it's not too much better on the north end of the city. And Station 85 on Sophie, especially with the development that's gone back there in Sawyer Mill, will improve the response times there.
Chief, I'm curious, during your campaign for this ballot issue, will there be opportunities for some of the citizens to come and tour the
Absolutely.
firehouses and see for themselves really what we've all seen as council members and what staff knows the conditions exist in those firehouses?
Our plan is to go out to civic clubs, churches, any organization that wants us to come out and meet and go through the plan and how it'll affect their particular neighborhood, their area, and the city as a whole. And we've actually reached out to the Station 85 area there on Sophie and offered to come to meet with all the residents that want to sit down and talk with us.
Wonderful.
So absolutely, yeah. I think that's important. And you know, all across the United States, where do firehouses go? They go in neighborhoods. That's where you want them. And that's what we're trying to do. Although you do realize there's some that have to be in industrial and commercial areas. So, can I answer any other questions? Thank you very much.
I would just add one other thing if I could. I think some people may have questioned when we first looked at the paving program and said, does it make sense, to do this all at once rather than a pay-as-you-go kind of a process? And I think when we recognized the fact that there would be incredible economies of scale in doing that way, and we were taking advantage of some really historically low interest rates, it kind of proved that out exactly, because we wound up doing $4 million more paving than we ever anticipated doing, and the cost of that financing was less than half of that. So in effect, we wound up adding a couple of $1 million completely for free because of the way we structured and did that. Plus, we get to do it in a very compressed time frame instead of having people watch it get done over 10 years and then have inflation eat away at it. Well, I don't think anybody wanted us to come to this point where we needed to have to build them all at the same time, but unfortunately we do. But given that, I think, again, the very most effective and efficient way to do this is design prototype stations so you save money on design, you save money on construction, you ultimately save money on the bidding, and you will save money when it all comes together because we'll still have, largely speaking, historically low interest rates. So if there is a silver lining to this, and the reason that we can actually accomplish this for only that 1 mil levy, and I imagine when we first started out we would never accomplish that, but as we ran the numbers it worked, it's because of doing it in this manner.
Mr. Palaniuk, since the proposal is to pick up what's rolling off the millage for the senior center, it would not be increasing property tax.
No, it wouldn't. And I would also say that, for most people who have a mortgage on their home and who wound up paying their mortgage with an escrow payment, they oftentimes don't even see those property taxes. So they won't know it because the property tax will be essentially the same. So it really will look relatively seamless for the average person who has a mortgage on their home, who pays an escrow, and the escrow pays for the property taxes, because the 1 mil will still be there as 1 mil.
There's no question we need new fire stations, and we need them soon. No question whatsoever. And I fully support the fact that we need to build more of them. It sickens me that in there it said, we knew about this in 2001, and we did nothing financially as a city since then. And that just I'm sure with all of you, that just sits like a rock, in my gut, and I hate that. And, but I just want to acknowledge that, and I know it's if we don't talk about it, then we're wrong, and I'm sure that we'll be planning better in the future. I reached out to Jim and asked, this is obviously critically important. I just don't understand why it's not on being proposed for the ballot in November. And I know Jim said because we had to get timing votes voted by council by certain dates in July and August. I just, and this was brought forth to us in January, on January 29th at the strategic planning session. And I know the plans were to do it in November. I don't understand why we're waiting, especially because the interest rates are lower now. We need them now. This just makes no sense to me why we've waited.
It makes sense to me because that was always the routine that the senior center was on. It was always a spring ballot request. This is keeping in what the previous requests were.
It was under my impression that it was going November initially.
Senior center always came in the spring. And this would be replacing the senior center.
The one other thing that I don't know if there's another option than this, but a 25-year levy means we are committing to taxing the next generation. Is there another option than a 25-year levy that obviously it means more.
I think what I would say, and I make this speech to almost everybody every few years about finance, and I think it's something that I hold really, really close, it's important to me, is some people have a real misunderstanding of how you use debt in a private sector versus the public sector. If you're personally taking on debt, it's a real value to you to pay it off because you get rid of that burden. In the public sector, there's a much different issue about debt other than just allowing you to be able to accomplish something, and that is the equity that comes with debt. When I talk about equity, if we simply paid this all off in 1 year, say we had a windfall of money for whatever it was, paid it all off, then in effect, this singular generation right now, these people who exist today in this community, wound up paying the entire cost of an asset that is valued for 50 or 60 years. Whereas if you use long-term debt to pay for a long-term asset, you are spreading the cost over all those who use it in an equitable manner. So using debt in local government finance, particularly for long-term assets, I believe is very equitable because it actually allows people over an entire length of time, for much of the length of the usable life of the asset, to actually pay for it. Rather than saying today someone should pay for it, and then all the people who come after them for another 45 or 50 years get it entirely free with no burden on them. So that's my particular opinion on that.
I hope it's not for free, because I hope we're putting money aside during that next generation's time frame to be paying for the next series of fire stations that are needed. So, I see the point, but I think that also they're going to have to be paying within the city budget for planning purposes for the longer term as well. So I guess your answer is no, we're not looking at any other option than 25 years.
Yeah, I think I discussed all of the various options. I feel that all others are not nearly as good as this one. But obviously, in the end, it's up to the voters, and whatever they determine, we will work at it from there. We will do the very best that we possibly can for this community and do everything in our power.
Any other comments? Okay.
Item number 9 this evening is Ordinance 2021-58, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a small business grant agreement with Access Envelope Incorporated for first reading.
Mr. Pelenick.
Yeah, this is the type of thing we like to see, a business moving from Hamilton to Middletown. So we're excited that Access Envelope had acquired the property at 2903 Terry Drive. Going to be bringing 6 existing full-time employees with them. Very excited about that. They've committed to invest at least $632,000 in this business. They believe that they will produce another 12 full-time employees over the next 4 years. We are providing them simply $15,000 to assist with their investment and their upfit and their improvements to this new facility. And one of the reasons, which I think is kind of exciting, that they actually came here, primarily a reason, was that it's within the opportunity zone. So this may be the very first time that we know for certain that because we had the federally designated opportunity zone, we've actually acquired a new business to our community that's relocated from somewhere else. So very excited, very pleased about it. I know Chriselle is really excited to be able to do this. And if there are any additional comments, Chriselle, did you have, I didn't see, yeah, any additional comments? And there are clawbacks in case, obviously, they don't fulfill.
Okay, next one, thank you.
Great. Item number 10 this evening is Ordinance 2021-59, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with the Ohio Department of Transportation for the 2022 urban paving project on a portion of State Route 4 from Titus Avenue to Germantown Road, here for a first reading.
Mr. Pelenick.
Yeah, this is a typical yearly contract we do with the Ohio Department of Transportation. This is for next year, 2022's urban paving program. As Ms. Cohen mentioned, it's the section from Titus Avenue to Germantown Road. Total cost, $775,000. Our share would be $240,000, so we'd be paying about 31% of the total. Would come from our general capital fund, which has been budgeted. So something that we look forward to is just some additional paving on a much-needed section of our roadway.
Item number 11 is ordinance O 2021-60, an ordinance vacating a portion of the public right-of-way located between the properties at 430 and 431 Kenridge Drive. Here for a first reading.
Mr. Pelnick, do you have anything to add to this? I know this is our public hearing.
Yeah, no, I think Ms. Combs described in great detail, and I think you heard from the specific applicant as well. So I think unless there are additional questions, I think you've probably heard quite a bit about it.
I'm personally grateful to see the applicant actually come to the meeting. That means a lot, and it shows your involvement, so thank you.
The last matter this evening is ordinance number O 2021-61, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing an extension of a contract with Middletown Management Incorporated for EMS billing services. Here for a first reading.
Mr. Pelnick.
Yes, as you know, the city's fire department has over 7,000 yearly transports. Associated with those transports are billing. Obviously, that's a lot of effort. Some years back, quite a few years back, the city started contracting this outsourced, and Medicount has been doing this for us for quite a number of years. Been doing it quite successfully, and the department and finance department are both very pleased with the work that they do. They've offered to extend their existing contract for 3 additional years through October 31st of 2024 under the same terms, which is 5.5% of all the collected revenues that they receive on our behalf, they get to keep. So we think this is a continuing good relationship, and we would recommend that this contract be extended.
I can definitely see how it would be cost prohibitive to take it in-house. I know we don't have a lot of high staffing levels whatsoever. Is 9 years for a contract not going out to bid normal in the government? I feel like that's a long time to not have put any requests for proposals out.
I don't know if you can say that it's necessarily normal. I think, on a case-by-case basis, sometimes you have something like this, which is you feel like you've got a very good provider of the service. There are relatively few, providers in this particular space that do this and do it particularly effectively. And, your costs are not going up and you're satisfied with it. So, could we be trying this again and rebidding it? Sure. If you tell us to do that, we'll do that. We would still be making this recommendation. We think they're a great service. They're doing a great job. The costs are the same. And Chief Lawley, do you have anything further to add on that?
I really don't have anything other than that, other than that account has been the best bid we have received in quite some time when we did it 6 years ago.
It said 2012 on the staff report, 9 years ago.
And they have provided us with quality service. The other thing is, it's interesting that they're willing to stay with the same costs. And that was probably one of the bigger things that got us to encourage that we just stay with it. We build a great working relationship with them. But as City Manager Pelnick said, I understand the part of it.
Have we made any inquiries even into what other cities are paying percentage-wise? I mean, it seems like it's basically a 5.5%, right? And that's for the billing service. Do we know what other companies are even in the market, or if we're...
What I would say is actually the percentage is far less important as the rate of collections. In our community, unfortunately, is a poor community. And so many of our transports wind up being either through Medicaid or uncollectible, that, it's so important that the service is doing the very best they can and following up as much as possible to try to at least get as much of the potential collections as possible, which is probably more important than the actual percentage they're getting. So in that regard, I know, Chief, our billings must be dramatically higher than what our collections are because, again, you've got a lot of folks that simply have no capacity to pay that, other than Medicaid maybe, don't have any ability to do it. Is that correct?
You took the,
Yeah, our collections are relatively high. One thought I had also, and I just slipped my mind, that account does a lot of other communities in this area also. So what they charge us is pretty standard, what other communities our size are paying. Tom, did you have anything to add to that?
No, the collections, we look at comparisons to other communities, and our collections are really good. Not only comes from the medics and their documentation, but how well in depth the billing company digs in to what the actual run should be billed for. And they've done a really good job for us. That's why I'm coming.
And I guess,
We try
that
to
was
make up
the
for
point that I
soft
was.
billing. We're in soft billing, so we do not do hard billing, we do soft billing. And so we try to make our guys as diligent as possible to fill out the reports correctly to make it easier for Medi-Count to get those collections. I'm sorry, Jim.
No, not at all. You made my point, and that the idea was that we do believe they've done really well with collections, even though it's tough out there doing it. So that's more important, honestly, than 5.5 versus 5 or 4 or 6, because in the end, their ability to collect more of what's outstanding really pays off.
Thank you. Okay. Do we have any new business items this evening?
I'd just seen an article the other day, and I read a little bit deeper, I'm sure you guys are aware, but where there were conversations about, from the administration, about potentially being able to use ARPA funds for ongoing expenses. And I think they were even referring to some salary and position work. So I just wanted to stay on top of that, because I think as we're seeing us struggle with recruitment and retention for our finance position, for our firefighters where the turnover is higher, if there's a way that we are at some point allowed to use these ARPA funds for a different financial mechanism, I would want to be looking at that as a way to help.
Absolutely. And what I would say is, I think if you recall our creativity when it came to CARES Act, we looked under every bush, every tree, used every possible means that we possibly could to use them in every possible way that we could. Having said that, one of the things that actually hurt us with ARPA is the fact that we received a lot of CARES Act funding. So there's no question you can use ARPA funds to make up for lost revenues, but primarily what they're looking at is that time frame that CARES Act gave us the money. So we wound up with more money in that particular budget year because of CARES Act than we would have, on the otherwise. So you can't sort of solve that one with this one. So it's kind of one works against the other. But there is opportunity for some premium pay. We're looking very closely at that. There is ability to, use it so long as it's meeting the needs of these other things. So again, we're going to get as creative as we can. But as far as typical, normal kinds of things, the goal of ARPA was to make up for things that were hurt or that you weren't allowed to do because of the pandemic, and or to create some kind of future improvements for your community that will get them past the negative things that hurt your local economy. And they specifically talked about tourism and hospitality and things like that. But again, we're looking at everything.
Any other new business items? Okay, well, with that, we will adjourn the meeting until our next meeting on the 20th of July at 17:30 here in council chambers. And until then, blue skies over Middletown.